Welcome to Excelling in Christ, the podcast where we honestly seek to be better Christians today than we were yesterday. We're not disappointed by baby steps. Why? Because we know that growth takes time. So what does disappoint us? Not seeing progress within ourselves over time. So today we're going to tackle the sticky question of streaming church, electronic church, you can call it virtual church. How does all the media that we have today fit into excelling in Christ? Can streaming and social media be a tool for Christ? So, if you're ready to take a look, we're going to dive in. And I think you'll walk away from this podcast satisfied. So I want to start with a little analogy. I want you to imagine a married couple. They have a beautiful wedding. They have a wonderful reception. And it comes to the end of the evening. It's time to leave. And they run down the sidewalk while their friends throw birdseed or blow bubbles or whatever they do. And when they get to the end of the sidewalk, they go to separate cars. And they wave joyfully at each other and say, "I'll text you later." And they go off to live in separate houses and pursue a virtual marriage. Is that your idea of two people becoming one? Now, I get there are probably some people out there to say that would be a great marriage in my opinion, but the fact of the matter is that is not God's plan for a marriage. A virtual marriage is not really a marriage, is it? Now, again, I'm sure some people wouldn't mind, but in God's plan, marriage is two people together in life becoming one. So I'm saying that a married couple cannot have a virtual marriage. Now, I'm not saying they cannot utilize media. There's a difference there. Of course they can utilize media. But what I'm saying is that they cannot fulfill God's plan for marriage if all they do is primarily have a virtual relationship rather than a real relationship in this life sharing life together. And I think most of you would agree with that. So, how does this analogy apply to church? What am I saying about church and spirituality? What I'm saying is that social media has a place. There is value in social media for our churches, but we must be wise as serpents, harmless as doves, and be sure that we don't let Satan shortchange us, cheat us, by relying too much on our media. I'm saying that if a person is trying to be primarily a virtual online Christian, if their church life is primarily limited to social media, then something is wrong. Something is incomplete. That was not God's plan. It's kind of like being married but rarely ever being with your wife. Imagine saying, "Oh yeah, we're married and I see her twice a year. I see her at Christmas and I see her at Easter. But the rest of the time it's just all virtual." No, that's not working. I'm not buying that, and I hope you're not buying that. So I need to clarify a little point here, though, before someone listening jumps to conclusions and gets their feelings hurt. I am not condemning all use of modern media. Absolutely not condemning it all. In fact, my heart goes out to people who are in situations like nursing homes, or they're housebound, or they may be in a rehabilitation hospital, or deployed in the military, and other situations that you can probably come up with. There are people who really need what we could give them through our various virtual church or live streaming social media. So, who am I deliberately prodding and poking at? Because I am, and I'm very deliberate here. I'm deliberately prodding and poking at the spiritually weak, the lazy, the irresponsible. I'm prodding and poking at the people that think they are carrying their cross, following Christ, and can't get themselves off the couch Sunday morning, get out of their pajamas and put their warm coffee down long enough to get to church and actually be a part of a worship service when they can get out and run around all week long and do anything else they want to do. Look, some people need to get over their lazy selves and grow up in Christ. There is a time to become a man, become a grown woman, and put away childish things. And virtual church is making a lot of folks lukewarm. And Jesus warned the lukewarm, didn't he? That's over Revelation 3, verse 15 and 16. He said he would spew them out of his mouth. So, what is my basic point here? It is really simple. Live streaming church or virtual church is not the same as being with your church family in person. Virtual church is not God's perpetual plan. Absolutely not. So, what is God's plan? Well, that's a good question. I'm glad you asked. In John 17:20 through 22, Christ prayed, and he prayed that we, his followers, would become one with one another, just as he and the Father in heaven are one. Now, you can't do that virtually. You can kind of know who someone is, but you can't have that deep, unifying oneness in relationship if all you do is live stream church. Now, again, let me be careful. I understand that some people can't make it in person. I am glad that we, even here where I work, do offer live stream for our people who are homebound and other situations where they just can't get out on occasions, or they're in the end of their life or what have you, and they just can't get out anymore. But when I visit these people, they always tell me how much they miss being present in the worship service in person. Now think about this a second. Why do they miss being in the worship service in person? And the answer is because there is something we get by being personally present that you cannot get virtually. So I'm not totally against virtual. I think it's great as a Band-Aid. But a Band-Aid is not a permanent answer. And those people leaning on it as though it is their permanent answer are deceiving themselves, and they are not following what God designed Christianity to be. So, I'm ready to take a little deeper look if you're ready to peel back another layer. The people that hunger to be part of God's family, they long to worship God. Those are the people God is looking for. God is not looking for mere spectators and bench warmers. God is looking for people who will love Him with all their heart, mind, and soul, and love their neighbor as themselves. That's who God is looking for. So let's drop another little analogy here. Have you ever been to the Grand Canyon? I have not personally, but if you've been to the Grand Canyon, I want you to compare that experience with looking at a picture of the Grand Canyon. And I've been assured that looking at a picture of the Grand Canyon can never, ever, ever equal the experience of standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon and being physically there. How many of us have pictures of our babies, grandbabies around about? Of course we have pictures around about. Question is the picture the same as being with your grandbaby, spending time with your grandbaby? And the answer is absolutely not. I'm glad I get to FaceTime with my grandbabies when that's the only option I have for some reason, but it will never, ever be a substitute for spending time with my grandbabies. One more little analogy. Let's imagine we go to the restaurant, you open up the menu and you just look at the pictures. And you put the menu down and you walk away. Are you full? Are you satisfied? Did you get fed? And obviously you need to do something more than just look at the pictures. So virtual reality may actually be the next best thing to being there, but that's the problem. It's the next best thing to being there. Virtual reality is not the same as being there. It is something less, and it is not God's plan. So what is God's plan? How do we figure it out? Well, you know what we do here at Excelling in Christ. We go back to the Bible. We like to thump on some Bible pages. We want to see ink on the page. We want a book, chapter, and verse foundation. And so I thought of verses like Hebrews 10:24, where he tells us to consider one another in order to stir up love and good works, and not forsaking the assembling of ourselves together. God's plan is for us to get together and to be a positive influence on one another. Now, why did he do it that way? Why did he formulate this plan? I don't know. That's his business. I got some ideas and I'll share them in just a minute. But he doesn't owe us a why. He said, forsake not the assembling of yourselves together. Get together and stir one another up. Encourage one another. Help one another. Present with one another. He doesn't owe us a why. Ecclesiastes 12:13 says it is the whole of man to fear God and keep his commandments. All I got to know is that assembly is the will of God. That's all I need to know. And I trust that he knew what he was doing, why he did it, and I'm going to get on board with his agenda. And people who resist that are actually resisting the will of God. So let me offer you my little insights, my opinions. I think one of the great values of being together and really spending some time in person, not just doing Marco Polos, and Marco Polo's a fine app, nothing against it, but it's a virtual relationship. We can use it as a tool, but we need time together. And so Proverbs 27:17 says, as iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. We tend to sharpen one another far more effectively when we literally spend some time together. Romans 12:1-2 said, present your bodies a living sacrifice. Someone said the first act of worship is getting up and preparing yourself to assemble with your church family on Sunday. Part of the sacrifice is giving up our comfort and convenience, making that whole long trip across town in our comfortable car, and spending time with our church brethren. Colossians 3:16 tells us to teach one another with psalms and hymns and spiritual songs. Sure, you can sing by yourself. I'm not against that. But the Bible is clear that there's a time where we have that one another aspect in singing with and to one another. And you can't do that by yourself. You can't do that sitting at home watching virtual church. Oh, sure, you can sit on your couch at home all by yourself, but isn't anybody going to hear you? You're not going to fulfill the one another part. Then there's Psalms 122 and verse 1. And David said, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Let us go to church. Let me modernize it a bit. But David did not say, I was glad when they said to me, let us live stream the worship service. It doesn't work that way. It's getting there and being part of God's people with God's people. Now, I'm going to have to tell you, there's some people that just puzzle the fool out of me. I don't get it. I don't understand them. They don't want to take time to be with God's people on Sunday and worship God. They don't want to be with other Christians, but somehow they think they're going to be happy in heaven spending time with these people for all eternity. Look, if you don't enjoy the saints here, I don't think you're going to enjoy the saints over there. There is one last thing I'll bring up as I do my little rant thing here. Acts 14:22 says that we must enter the kingdom through many tribulations. If a Christian is too lazy, irresponsible, and selfish, and insist on laying on their couch in their PJs, if going to church service is too difficult for them, are they ever going to endure real tribulation and thereby enter the kingdom? Now, let me say again, I'm definitely not trying to take media options away from us. I am saying we must use them wisely. There is a right way and there is a wrong way. When we choose to let virtual church substitute for being part of the worship, when we could be present if we wanted, then that is the wrong way. Thanks for listening. I hope this supports you in your pursuit of being wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove. Please share this wherever you do your social media. Text the link to a friend who might need a little nudge. And as always, I hope you have a great day.